For the lips of the adulterous woman drip honey, and her speech is smoother than oil. Her feet go down to death. Her steps lead straight to the grave. Child, that escalated quickly. Go on and get your Bibles, okay? So we can jump into chapter 5. Let's get it. Let's go. Howdy, fam. And for anybody that's new, welcome to my corner of the universe. I am excited to jump into this Bible study, but for those of you that need an itinerary on how I run this ship, go ahead and scroll down into the description box below and look at the chapters and look for any Bible disclaimers on the lesson, okay? Without any further ado, let's do it! My son, pay attention to my wisdom. Turn your ear to my words of insight, that you may maintain discretion, and your lips may preserve knowledge. For the lips of the adulterous woman drip honey, and her speech is smoother than oil. But in the end, she is bitter as gall, sharp as a double-edged sword. Her feet go down to death. Her steps lead straight to the grave. She gives no thought to the ways of life. Her paths wander aimlessly, but she does not know it. Now then, my sons, listen to me. Do not turn aside from what I say. Keep to a path far from her. Do not go near the door of her house, lest you lose your honor to others and your dignity to the one who is cruel, lest strangers feast on your wealth and your toil enrich the house of another. At the end of your life, you will groan. When your flesh and body are spent, you will say, "How I hated discipline! How my heart spurned correction! I would not obey my teachers or turn my ear to my instructors. And I was soon in serious trouble in the assembly of God's people. Drink water from your own cistern, running water from your own well. Should your springs overflow in the streets, your streams of water in public squares? Let them be yours alone, never to be shared with strangers. May your fountain be blessed, and may you rejoice in the wife of your youth. A loving doe, a graceful deer, may her breast satisfy you always. May you ever be intoxicated with her love. Why, my son, be intoxicated with another man's wife? Why not embrace the bosom of a wayward woman? For your ways are in full view of the Lord, and he examines all your paths. The evil deeds of the wicked ensnare them. The cords of their sins hold them fast. For lack of discipline they will die, led astray by their own great folly. All right, let's go ahead and jump into a closer look at Proverbs 5. One of the things that stuck out to me was the very ending of our verses here, and that was the full view of the Lord. It says, "For your ways are in full view of the Lord, and he examines all your paths." That means that nothing is hidden, okay? Not even your thoughts. He sees all, he hears all, he knows all. Nothing surprises God. So it just shocks me when people really be trying to do sneaky stuff. And I'm like, God sees you, right? That would be like you're going to rob a bank and you go in without a mask on, you go in with your ID badge, stuck to your forehead, and you walk right in past the whole security guard in full view of what you're doing, and you see yourself on camera, and you still go through with it. That's the same thing when it comes to God and whatever you do. I mean, he sees everything. That means he sees all, he hears all, he knows it all. He even hears your thoughts. Okay. So there's nothing hidden. And just to further expound on that, he knows everything before it happens. He's omnipresent. He's everywhere all at once. Okay, let's go ahead and check out Psalms 139:16. I'm going to read this in the NLT version, the New Living Translation, and it says, "You saw me before I was born. Every day of my life was recorded in your book. Every moment was laid out before a single day had passed." That means that God knows everything that you are going to do before you do it. Absolutely everything. The best way that I can explain this is if you are a Marvel comic follower, I had to learn this. There's such a thing, apparently, as the multiverse. And within this multiverse, there can be infinite possibilities of one event. So, one action does this and you go down this path. One action does that. Like, you have infinite future possibilities. You may die on this path, but you live on that path and all this other stuff. So think of it that way. God has seen, before you even created, all of the infinite paths you could possibly take. So nothing surprises him at the end of the day with your free will and your will to do whatever you want. He knows, your greatest will, your worstest will, where it will end up. So nothing surprises him at all. On any given day, he can see exactly which path you chose. Okay. And to further expound on him being able to see the future and the past and know everything, let's go ahead and look at Isaiah 46 verses 9-10. I'm going to read this one in the CSB version. And it says, "Remember what happened long ago, for I am God, and there is no other. I am God, and no one is like me. I declare the end from the beginning, and from long ago, what is not yet done, saying, my plan will take place, and I will do all my will." Okay, point blank, period. It was very important to me. It stuck out, and I just had to mention it. Let's go ahead and take a look at some definitions. I have honor, cistern, and gall. Maybe not the most words, but I think they deserve a closer look. So with honor, that's a noun, and it means to show great respect for someone or something, especially in public. To regard or treat someone with admiration and respect. With a cistern, that's a noun, and it's a tank or a container for storing water or an artificial reservoir. And with gall, that's a noun, and it's bile, like from an animal or from a liver. It's the liquid and the acids that flow from the liver. Okay. Or it could mean something bitter or severe. Let's go ahead and take a deeper look into why I wanted to look at honor. So honor, one of the Hebrew words for honor is kavod, and that means it can separate into two different categories. Okay. It can be ascribed honor or achieved honor. Ascribed honor means that it is given to you. Okay. Like, let's say that you're an heir, and because of you being an heir, you have certain things given to you. You have certain land given to you. You have certain wealth that's just handed to you. It's given to you. That's an honor that was given to you. Or it could be ascribed, which means it's something that you earn or something that you accomplish. Like, you go through school to become a lawyer, and then you do everything right to become a judge. It is an honor to be a judge. Or You build up this reputation of being a good person, a good character, good morals. That's your honor. Okay. It's like your glory. Okay. Honor, glory, those two things go together. And I just wanted to take a deeper look into that. Now, a cistern, why would you want to describe a cistern? That matters not. Well, a lot of our younger generation may not even know what a cistern is. So it's important to identify that and to explain why it's used as an analogy or even mention. So a cistern collects water and it doesn't have a continuous flow of water. What does that mean? So with a well, for water, it goes from the ground. So any water that is in the ground, below the ground, there's a constant flow or a movement of water from which you can pull from this well. Okay. But a cistern is very different. A cistern actually collects rainwater or water that falls into it. So if it doesn't rain, you don't have any water. Okay. If nothing is put into it, there's nothing to keep, into this tank or this reservoir. It depends on essentially rainwater. So that's important, especially when we're talking about scripturally. If you have a cistern and God has filled it up, would you pour it out into the street just for anybody to be able to use it? And then once all the water is gone, it's gone. Also, a cistern is very important when God relates it to us because he says we're like cisterns, right? And he is the flowing, living water that overflows our cistern. He makes sure that our reservoirs are full and he never runs out. So he's not a cistern at all. He fills the cistern. So that's important to point out. Now, as far as gall, you're like, why would you want to even talk about gall? Well, gall comes up a few times in the Bible, and in the context of this description that we're talking about in this scripture of Proverbs, it is basically something that is bitter. A sour or bitter wine is what it was most notably known for. That was maybe mixed with myrrh. It could also be a poisonous plant or a wormwood that also referred to as bitter water. And wormwood, that word comes up in Revelation, and it's talking about in the sky, the stars, the astronomy, or in the sky, okay, with stars, that there's a wormwood. I'm not an astronomist or astronomy or anything like that. I believe there is a star that they call, or a hole or something of that sort. I'm telling you, this is not my area of expertise. That is called the wormwood. And when it talks about it in Revelation, it says that when that comes up, it's going to turn the waters on earth bitter. So back to what we're talking about in this context, it means bitter water. Just to jump around really quick, when Jesus was on the cross and he was, dying, they offered, or he was offered, gall. And I was thinking in my mind, gall, like, why would you give someone liver fluids, right? But in that context, it was like a sour or bitter wine. Okay. I don't know why you would want that either, but just context. Okay. And as far as some scriptures that stuck out to me, it was Proverbs, verse 5 and 23 from this chapter of 5. And, on verse 5, it was, her feet goes down to death. Her step leads straight to the grave. Here we are talking about adultery or an adulterous woman. And I really want to point out that not all words are just actions. Okay. When you go into the spiritual realm and you dig a little deeper, you find out that these words that we say are actions are actually spirits. Okay. So here we are talking about the spirit of adultery. Adultery, the spirit, leads you down to death. Okay. Straight to the grave. And by you coming into agreement and working in adultery's actions, That's where it will lead you. That's important when we're going to jump into our real life story here in a moment. As far as verse 23, it's, for the lack of discipline, they will die, led astray by their own great folly. Again, if you come into agreement with this spirit and you don't discipline yourself, you don't follow instruction, you don't obey what, is right versus wrong, then it will lead to death due to your own shenanigans. Leading into our real stories that can relate to Proverbs 5, I want you to think about honor and how it says specifically in Proverbs 5 that if you go along with adultery, if you go along with this adulterous woman, that it can lead to embarrassment. It can lead to you losing your honor, just terrible, terrible things. And that is still very, very valid in today's society. And I want you to think about that as we look at our real talk scenario, because specifically it says here on verse 9, let's go back to 8. And I'm reading an NIV. Keep to a path far from her. We're talking about adultery. Do not go near the door of her house, lest you lose your honor. Okay? You're going to lose respect. Okay? You're going to lose the admiration. And in some cases, you can actually lose your wealth. And when it continues to talk, and your dignity to one who is cruel, you can lose your dignity. Lest strangers feast on your wealth, and your toil enrich the house of another. Meaning, if you get into an entanglement with adultery, you can lose your wealth. You can lose your finances. You can lose your house. You can lose everything just by messing with the spirit. And I just want you to think about that as we look at our real life stories that are coming up. So let's go ahead and jump into that. Afterwards, go ahead and journal with me. Get your journals out, journal with me, and then we'll come back for the conclusion.
Now, in April, you filed for divorce from your husband.
Correct.
Kevin, after nearly 22 years of marriage.
Correct.
And
25 years being together.
Being together.
Correct.
And because of his infidelity.
Oh, well.
Yeah.
Infidelity is one thing. A full baby is a whole nother topic. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, you said in the New York Times Magazine, I'm a very forgiving person, but there's one thing I could never be a part of, and that one thing happened.
Mm-hmm. Oh, well.
And that was it.
Yeah.
The baby did it.
A baby. I'm not changing Pampers. I want to be.
Jilted husband is getting a multi-million-dollar payday from the man he says ruined his marriage. Keith King sued his wife's lover after a dramatic confrontation and won. ABC's Diane Macedo has that story.
Why are you taking my wife?
Guys, come.
Why are you taking my wife from me?
It's a final plea from a desperate husband.
Dating. You're picking him over me?
This video shows BMX stunt show owner Keith King fighting for his wife, Danielle. The man holding him in the doorway is Francisco Hizar, his wife's lover.
Stop trying to enter.
You can hear Danielle in the background as she films the whole ordeal.
I don't want this. I don't want it to be like this.
Danny, why did you lie to me?
Now, in an unusual court case, a judge is ordering Hizar to pay more than $8.5 million for the affair.
Francisco.
Do you hear that?
She's my wife, man.
I felt like we were a perfect pair. We were a team.
King says he found out about the betrayal in 2015 after seeing phone records to a number he didn't recognize. He decided to confront Hizar directly.
So when he answered, I simply said, she is a married woman. Do not contact her ever again.
Instead, Hizar rented a hotel room less than a mile from King's home, and the affair continued. That's when King filed a civil complaint against Hizar, citing an obscure law. alienation of affection. The law requires that you and your spouse had a happy marriage, the love and affection between you and your spouse was destroyed, and that the defendant and their wrongful or malicious actions were the reason the marriage was destroyed. King gathered text messages, Facebook posts, phone records, and hotel receipts, aiming to prove Hazar's actions drove a wedge between him and his wife.
The difficulty is proving that first element, that the plaintiff and his spouse, his or her spouse, actually did have a happy marriage when this affair happened.
The alienation of affection law exists in 6 states, including North Carolina, where King made his claim.
What I've endured is I've compared it to like a nuclear bomb going on around my surroundings.
Now we don't do that anymore. So while this was worthy of the nation's highest office, Ronald Reagan's speech, 12 years later, on this day in 1998, a scandal of sex and lies marked a low point for the White House.
It was the day President Bill Clinton said words that would follow him and his wife for years to come. Scott Pelley reports.
Tonight, Monica Lewinsky's attorneys tell us that she has told prosecutors all she knows. They describe what they call a complete account of her relationship with President Clinton. But that account was given over the telephone today and was not written down. Prosecutors are still trying to decide whether they will offer immunity. This new threat came on the same day that the president finally rallied to his own defense. The president had been silent 3 days. His lawyers wanted it that way. But the political damage was rising much too fast. Today, drawn and bleary-eyed, Mr. Clinton joined the battle to save his presidency.
But I want to say one thing to the American people. I want you to listen to me. I'm going to say this again. I did not have sexual relations with that woman, Miss Lewinsky. I never told anybody to lie, not a single time, never. These allegations are false, and I need to go back to work for the American people. Thank you.
He turned his back on questions as the First Lady followed, applauding. The woman who could bring down the president appeared for the first time today, leaving her apartment with her lawyer. Lewinsky has indicated she will accuse Mr. Clinton of a sexual relationship, but only with a guarantee from prosecutors.
He knows that I want essentially full immunity. He knows that I want and will accept nothing less than a promise not to prosecute. So how close we are is really in his hands, not mine.
Tonight, independent counsel Kenneth Starr is considering whether to accept Lewinsky's oral statement. He had been insisting on a written version. CBS News has learned the independent counsel is investigating reports that people working in the White House spotted Mr. Clinton and Lewinsky alone in the mansion at various times. Secret Service records have been subpoenaed. The agents expect to be next. The White House strongly denies the reports.
The president's denial is quite clear that there couldn't have been that type of encounter. We've checked even with people who would have presumably been brought a report of any incident of that nature, and they categorically deny there was such an incident.
Sources tell CBS News Lewinsky was a frequent visitor to the White House long after she left the staff. Last month, she was cleared in at least 4 times, including weekends and evenings. But her welcome seems to have ended 3 weeks ago. On January 3rd, she was denied entry at the gate. And sources tell CBS News she threw a fit, screaming, "Don't you know who I am?" The president was traveling the day Lewinsky was turned away. 4 days later, she signed her sworn affidavit that she never had sex with Mr. Clinton. A grand jury is due to convene tomorrow, Wednesday, and Thursday. The grand jury will be hearing from witnesses that include the president's friend Vernon Jordan and the president's own personal secretary.
It took 7 more months for the other shoe to drop, and the Daily News ran the story with the caption, "Liar, liar." After President Clinton admitted to having an inappropriate relationship with Monica Lewinsky, the president was impeached by the House, but then acquitted by the United States Senate.
Hey, 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 you made it to this point. Go ahead and clap it up for yourself because you are awesome. I enjoyed reading Proverbs 5. I like how it brought back to the forefront that everything you do, God sees. That any path you choose, He's examining all over it. It's like having that loving parent that you just can't hide anything from. Not even your thoughts. Have you ever looked at one of your parents not saying anything, but you were just really going off in your head, and they turn around and they look at you and say, I heard that. And you're like, but I didn't say anything. It's kind of like that with God. Anyways, go ahead, leave a comment below and let me know what your favorite part of the scripture was. And if you journal along with me, go ahead and tag me on Instagram using hashtag journal with me. I would love to see your beautiful thoughts and creations. If you'd enjoyed this video, go ahead and smash the like button for me. Just smash it. All right. And consider subscribing to the channel as well if you haven't already. And if you haven't, what are you waiting for? Okay. Until next time, shalom and matane.